for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Jack Prince.
And Jack, we have to talk about something that we kind of predicted. We never thought it would go this far. A Republican candidate for office who lost is being accused of perpetrating shootings at Democratic lawmakers' homes. Either he did it himself or he has hired people to do it. We've got to talk about that. That's some crazy stuff there.
For sure.
We also have to give you an update on what's happening in Ottawa County, Michigan with the Ottawa Impact Group of Fruits and Nuts. We have to give the lecture, folks. We've been warning you and warning you. Now the doctors of talk radio are going to give you the lecture that you could not call yourself progressive if you're anti-Bernie Sanders or if you suck up to rich people.
Exactly.
And
the rubric.
Yep. And we're also going to have to talk about one of your favorites, Jack, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, now going after education further than he has before. So
exactly. Yep.
We'll get to all of that in just a moment, but before we start, a couple of reminders. You can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Mastodon by doing a search there for Southpaws Radio. And you can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Podvine, and Pandora by doing a search for Southpaws. And once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, Tumblr, YouTube, and Mastodon accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, KEPJ in San Antonio, Texas, and WGRN, Columbus, Ohio. So we got a new one hooked. Yeah, we would love to have more radio stations in the Pacifica family join our family. Well, we've been chomping at the bit to talk about this, Jack. You and I both. I have this story. This is Daryl Coote writing for United Press International. Yeah, it's not very often that we use the Mooney-owned UPI as a source, but we'll take it this time. Authorities in Albuquerque announced Monday that a failed New Mexico State House candidate has been arrested on accusations of orchestrating a series of recent shootings at the homes of Democratic officials. A SWAT team arrested 39-year-old Republican Solomon Pena in Albuquerque Monday afternoon for leading a conspiracy involving 4 gunmen whom he paid to shoot at the homes of 2 Bernalillo County commissioners and 2 state legislators over a month period starting in early December. That's according to details disclosed at a press conference by officials. Albuquerque Police Chief Harold Medina told reporters, quote, "It is believed that he is the mastermind that was behind this and that was organizing this," end of quote.
Sure was.
The series of shootings had raised concerns in Albuquerque and fears for the safety of Democrats, with officials describing it as an attack on democracy. During the Monday press conference, authorities pointed to Pena's November defeat for the District 14 seat in the State House as potential motive for organizing the shootings. Democrat Miguel Garcia beat Pena with a vote of 74% to 26%, according to state results. Following the election in November, Pena published a photo of himself to Twitter with the caption reading, quote, I never conceded my HD-14 race, now researching my options, end of quote. Well, apparently, he thought some of his options were shooting a gun at Democratic lawmakers' houses.
Evidently.
Authorities on Monday said that following his election loss, Pena had visited 3 county commissioners and one of 2 state senators who would be a target of the conspiracy to lodge complaints alleging the contest he lost had been rigged and involved fraud. Shortly after he visited their houses, the shootings in December began, according to authorities. Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller described Pena during the press conference as a right-wing radical, an election denier, and, quote, someone who did the worst imaginable thing you can do when you have a political disagreement, which is to turn that to violence, end of quote.
You can't give me enough superlatives on how bad this guy is and how much of an increase in badness embodied in a political candidate we've ever had. You think about his criteria, his actual claim to political worthiness. Did he help the poor? Was he in some sort of a educational outreach? Does he have any academic, any type of real accomplishment academically? Was he a statesman of any sort? Was he the head of a PTA? Did he coach Little League Baseball? No, this was the ringleader of a hit and break shoplifting ring. Mm-hmm. Are you kidding me? Did we fall asleep somewhere, Darren, and wake up in this dystopian political environment where this guy was even a candidate? This is beyond a slide into decay. This is off the grid. This is off the chart. Yeah, we've got bozos like Herschel Walker. We've got pathological liars like this idiot Santos.
Yeah,
an absolute living fraud. He is a living psychological chapter in some sort of disorder. Pathological probably doesn't cover it. But they're minor players of fools compared to this guy. This guy is the oldest vintage bottle of Trump wine. Of all the actions and foolishness, hatred, misogyny, racism that Trump infused into our society, this is the wine that is the most perfect aroma of Donald Trump and this guy called Pena. Tell me it's not.
It's the aroma of oranges and soiled diapers at Donald Trump's.
Oh, my goodness. I never thought we'd get here. I just couldn't imagine getting here.
I know. Isn't it something?
It's amazing.
I mean, I'm downplaying this. But really, though, should it be a surprise? Should it really be a surprise that somebody would go this far?
It was inevitable, I guess.
Yeah, considering what we've had with Trump. I'm going to march to the Capitol. I want you to follow me down to the Capitol. You know, he stoked it. He has stoked violence since he announced that he was running for president.
Exactly. And those seeds have come to fruition in this guy, Pena.
Yep. Let me continue. I have another quote from Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller. He said, quote, "This type of radicalism is a threat to our nation, and it has made its way to our doorstep right here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But I know here we are going to push back, and we will not allow this to cross the threshold." End of quote. Pena is one of 5 suspects in the case. Authorities said that Pena contacted the men and paid them in cash for the shootings. Authorities would not say how many of the suspects were in custody Monday night, but Albuquerque Police Acting Commander Kyle Hartzick said they were still investigating the gunmen to see, quote, if they were even aware who these targets were, end of quote. Should that even matter?
No.
You know, you're paying somebody to shoot at another person's house.
Exactly. Deflection.
But is that unexpected coming from a law enforcement officer? Not really.
No.
Because they support this. They do.
Well, the law enforcers in Illinois are refusing to now back up the law, a law that was passed for the collection of automatic weaponry. a bunch of these conservative dodo birds said, no, we're not going to do it.
Well, then
we're not going to enforce the law. So what you're telling me in Albuquerque doesn't surprise me.
Then fire them.
Absolutely.
Them and hire somebody else. And if they don't like being fired, that's tough shit.
Yep.
It really is.
Don't pause. Don't even hesitate.
No, you can't. Because the minute you
They
do...
took an oath to uphold the law. My God, this is a direct violation of what they're supposed to be doing.
Yep. The minute you pause is the minute that they take that as a tacit approval of what they're doing.
Exactly.
Yep. Pena was arrested in connection to the shootings at the home of Bernalillo County Commissioner Adrian Barboa on December 4th, the home of New Mexico House Speaker Javier Martinez on December 8th, the home of former Bernalillo County Commissioner Debbie O'Malley on December 11th, and State Senator Linda Lopez on January 3rd. Hartsick said they also have evidence showing that Pena was present for the last shooting at Lopez's home and, quote, actually pulled the trigger on at least one of the firearms used, end of quote.
Yeah. Hey, here's pictures of him walking up to the front of the house, identifying himself.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the guy who went into Pelosi's home with a hammer. Who knows what would have happened if they had been there physically.
Exactly. Medina said the police arrested suspect Jose Trujillo less than an hour following the Lopez shooting. He said he was arrested following a traffic stop and that it was unknown at that time if he had been involved in any crime. Inside his vehicles, officers found 2 guns, 800 fentanyl pills, and cash. And it was through working with federal partners that they were able to match one of the weapons to the Lopez shooting. Medina said, quote, "This was a story about partnerships working together, utilizing technologies that got us the results that we needed in order to clear this case," end of quote.
It's a profile of a punk criminal. Are you kidding me?
Yes, it is.
Big amounts of cash, fentanyl possession. Yeah. Where have we landed?
I know.
I'm out of breath, Darren.
I know. Authorities had originally tied at least 2 other shootings to the series of crimes. One on December 10th at the former campaign office of newly elected Attorney General Raul Torres, and another on January 5th at the law office of State Senator Mo Maestas. On Monday, they said there was no evidence to connect them to Pena. Well, I'm not buying that story.
Me either.
Yeah.
Nope.
New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham said in a statement, quote, "I commend the Albuquerque Police Department, State Police, the Bernalillo County Sheriff, and the District Attorney's Office for a successful partnership to apprehend the suspected perpetrator. There is no place in our society or our democracy for violence against any elected official or their families, and I trust the justice system will hold those responsible for such attacks to full and fair account," end of quote. Well,
that's been the bedrock tradition. But where are we headed? Mm-hmm. This is the epitome of an antagonism against democracy when you are attacking your political opponent. Shooting through the walls while children are in bed, drywall flying on top of a 10-year-old, I think it was.
Yep.
This is the bottom of the bottom.
Yep. Make sure you shoot low because people don't lie on the floor in their houses.
Yeah.
What the hell?
And folks, what species of nut have we found here? Now, just listen for just a minute. Does anybody see that the common denominator of the nuttiest right-wing nut has these traits? Number one, they are election deniers. You just went through 15 rounds of idiocy with the recount vote over and over again for the Speaker of the House. And the contingent that stood there as the impetus for that refusal to go along with the majority of the party, and this is the Republican Party, they all have the same banner on their head. We are Trump deniers of the last election. All of them. When you hear that mantra come out of their mouth, it's like seeing foam from a rabid dog.
Yep.
And this was the overwhelming trait with this Pena guy. Instantly, he lost 75% to 26. He immediately pulled the Trump denial of the results, the Democratic results. So if you're looking for axioms, if you're looking from Southpaws for real guidelines, when you hear election deniers, That's even worse than saying they're a Trump supporter. When they fall behind the big lie, they're gone. The boat's off the mooring. They're out in a sea of idiocy, unretrievable. Nothing you can do. They're gone beyond repair.
Oh, my God.
Listen, this Pena thing hit a nerve with me, Darren. I'm sorry.
I know. It's beyond ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wait till next week. I didn't have time to get the story in time, but I'm going to give you a spoiler for next week's episode. I'm going to be talking about a school board meeting in Washtenaw and Monroe County, Michigan, where one of the speakers, who's one of these so-called enlightened parents, stood in front of the school board and read 3 minutes of pornography straight out of Penthouse magazine. I am not making this up. And tried to blame it on books that are in the school library.
I don't want to go way down this path, Darren, but you're telling me that he read from Penthouse magazine and linked that to library books in the library.
Absolutely. We'll give you a spoiler real quickly. It's in the Michigan Advance website, michiganadvance.com. Just take a look for it.
Wow.
They're nutty. Speaking of nutty, let's go to Ottawa County. This is Sarah Leach writing for the Holland Sentinel, dated January 16th, out of Allendale, a town you and I both know very well, Jack. You coached at Grand Valley, and I am a graduate of Grand Valley. Yeah, I taught there for a while in the heart of the Republican, conservative, idiotic mecca of Michigan. It's sitting in Allendale. Yes, indeed. Text messages recently provided to the Holland Sentinel show newly elected Ottawa Impact officials on the Allendale Public School Board methodically arranged for a Lansing-based law firm to take over legal services for the district long before they took office. The first meeting of the new school board, January 9th, saw a heated debate over which law firm would represent the board on legal matters, in addition to potentially severing its long-standing relationship with the Michigan Association of School Boards. Members of the board, including 2 Ottawa Impact affiliated officials, sought a change from Thrun Law Firm, which represents numerous school boards, to Coleman Legal Group, with little notice provided to other board members. Up until this year, do you know how many school districts Coleman represented? No, I'd be interested to know. I believe that number is 0. This is a new field for them. And Ottawa County, yeah, that's indicative of just how deep they are in darkness. Yep. In text messages spanning from November 21st to January 8th, now board president Corey Mango, now vice president Liz Ramey, and board member Anna Hendricks appeared to discuss Ramey's intention to solicit Coleman Legal Group services for the school board. The communications were obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request filed by an Ottawa County resident who shared it with the Holland Sentinel. The messages only include emails and texts that mention Coleman, so it's not clear if Ramey was directly addressing Mango and Hendricks together or separately, but both reply to some of the messages provided in the documents. Kevin Holstage, the only other board member to vote with Mango, Ramey, and Hendricks supporting the switch to Coleman on January 9th, does not appear in the text messages provided to the Sentinel. On November 21st, Ramey sent a text saying, quote, I have calls for legal counsel out to Great Lakes Justice Center, Rachel Sytak, David Coleman. I'll let you guys know if I find anything. Thanks. End of quote. You know some of the causes that this David Holman has fought for. Yes, and he's part of the Great Lakes Justice Center, if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we're talking the most critical, juicy, idiotic, from a mask wearing, you name it. It goes back to the nut that wouldn't cut hair in Owasso. Yeah, the guy, the barber that wanted to continue going on. Yeah, we've been watching his antics for a long time, Darren. Yes, we have. As a matter of fact, David Coleman is one of our douchebag of the week winners in 2022, which I'll mention at the end of the show what we have going on with that. On November 23rd, Ramey updated the group saying David Coleman had been planning to solicit school boards to legally represent them. Coleman and his son Stephen are the group's two primary attorneys. Quote, update, I talked to David Coleman. His firm is likely going to be taking on school boards to represent. He said he had been toying with the idea, but the more calls he gets demonstrating there's a huge need, he'd like to step in and fill it. He will know next week, end of quote. So once again, this law firm, quote-unquote law firm, has never represented a school board up until this year.
Well, it lines up with the overall objective of the hard right. Remember, Bannon said that the new battlefield wasn't going to be on the steps of the Capitol. They're moving all of that enmity and all of that violence into, guess where? The boardrooms across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I know that seems hard to imagine. You can take the venom and the volcanic lava from the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and tame it down from beating people with flagpoles into the boardrooms. But they've done that. Bannon told them that's where to go, and they went. Yeah. They're there. I've run into them head up. There is a group out now, a national group called Stop Mothers for Freedom. I recommend people look that up. You can join thousands of people who realize the urgency of thwarting these dangerous visitors to your local school board room.
Yes.
It is a battlefield, and if you go to sleep on it, you're going to lose.
Absolutely. On December 8th, Ramey said in a text, quote, friends, Coleman is in. We have a lawyer. Praise Jesus. End of quote.
Yeah, oh, wow.
Yeah. But the decision to hire new legal representation must take place during a public meeting as required by Michigan's Open Meetings Act, and the new board had yet to meet for an additional month. Other board members, Josh Thurkettle, Kim Kanata, and Pam DeYoung, said they were caught unaware of the other members' intentions. Emails show Thurkettle, Kanata, and DeYoung received an email from Superintendent Garth Cooper on January 8th, the day before the new school board's first meeting, notifying them of Ramey's intention to introduce a motion hiring Coleman Legal Group as well as exiting the MASB. By the way, that measure was delayed until the board's February 13th meeting. Mm-hmm. The switch to Coleman Legal Group was approved 4-3 with the Ottawa Impact majority prevailing. The text messages also show current Ottawa County Board Vice Chair Sylvia Rodea, who was one of the founders of Ottawa Impact. They say that she's affiliated. No, she helped start it. Got news for you.
We knew that previously as well.
Yep.
She wrote it with a guy named Joe Moore, isn't it? Was that his name?
Joe Moss. We'll get into Mr. Moss in a little bit here. Continuing, the text messages show Rodea assuring Ramey that Coleman Legal Group planned to start representing districts with school activist leaders. Wow. There you go, folks.
Yeah. Wow.
I live
a short distance from Ottawa County. Now they have somebody standing out by the Ottawa County sign that says "Stop your vehicle," and kind of like you used to take your gun off when you went into the bar out and
leave your brain.
Leave any brain activity or critical thinking here at the county line, because you're going into the dark ages. You're driving into a county that houses Holland, which is the prince. The stronghold of right-wing ideology. Been there for decades, been there for a long, long time. And then you got the DeVos influence on Hope College. It is a cesspool of conservative ideology. It goes back to Van Raalte. It goes back to hardcore Calvinism, which is today called progressive gospel, which means if you're rich, you're chosen by God, and you can do whatever the hell you want to do, and you can enact any laws you want to do, because you got the big boy backing you up, according to Calvin.
Yeah. I'm just going to once again reiterate something that I've said for the last couple of weeks on this show. I implore all of our West Michigan listeners, do me a favor, boycott. Totally boycott Ottawa County, any businesses, anything. Hell, if you can avoid driving through the county, I'd do it. Do not patronize any single business in Ottawa County until these fascist holes are gone.
Same fascist bungholes that closed the library for supposedly a single book and took away an access of learning to an entire neighborhood. That is in Ottawa County. You have to wonder, you really have to wonder what their grand design is. It's one thing to let the snake into the house. It's another thing to realize it's going to get you when you're not looking. And if you don't get the damn snake out, in other words, it's bad enough to let the enemy in. You have to project where they're going. There is a liberal, do I dare say progressive, that's going to speak at every single meeting, every Ottawa County board meeting. He gets 3 minutes. That's the law. He's going to address the crowd. And I don't know his full background, but it appears as if he may have been a professor. I'm not sure.
He is a retired college professor.
Yeah. He's going to start with rudimentary building blocks of basic understanding, like talking to children, like talking to somebody that's awakened from a coma. He's going to start with basic history. There's nothing these conservatives fear more than accurate history. Nothing, because it's an anathema to conservative philosophy, particularly today.
They fear knowledge.
Do you think they don't want a child to have any real history?
They fear
other than aggrandizement of America. That's the only history they want transmitted.
Jack, they fear education. They fear being educated.
Yeah, they want you just smart enough to be able to open a pop top and unfurl a Confederate flag in your back window. That's all you need to do.
I'll go one further with Carlin. They're doing the bidding of the owners of this country, because the owners of this country only want people who are smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork.
That's exactly. Yep.
On December 11th, Rodea texted Ramey saying she was on, quote, a statewide call. Coleman Group announced for school boards to school activist leaders, still likely not fully public, end of quote. Rodea, who had not yet been sworn into office in her county commissioner role, went on to mention the Great Schools Initiative and how it would support local school boards as well as the Thomas More Law Center. Rodea texted to Ramey, quote, sounds like Coleman and Thomas More Law Center will be in collaboration, end of quote. Great Schools Initiative, among other things, provides parents with forms to opt their child out of sex education in schools. Some of its blog posts include accusations that the Michigan Department of Education is colluding with local teachers, counselors, and administrators to actively deceive parents to cover up involvement in rogue sex ed, specifically implementing GSAs, which is gay-straight alliances, which the group claims are actively promoted to children of all ages. I got one word for you. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit.
Plop, plop, plop.
Exactly. Guys, don't believe this crap.
Oh, I know.
It's unreal.
Again, you just set sails with reality, and then a week later, you have to abandon your course of thinking because it gets that much worse.
It gets better, Jack. The Thomas More Law Center is a Christian conservative law firm based in Ann Arbor that aims to preserve America's Judeo-Christian heritage, defend the religious freedom of Christians, restore time-honored moral and family values, protect the sanctity of human life, and promote a strong national defense and a free and sovereign United States of America, according to its website.
Christian traditions. That same tradition that told young Europeans if they went and they slaughtered Arabs in the holy city, they'd get a direct pass right straight into heaven. They wouldn't have to go through the stations of penance. They could get immediate get out of jail and go into heaven. Or is it the same tradition that stood in the South for slavery? The Baptists, I believe they're Christians. Hell yes, they're Christians. Mm-hmm. They supported the absolute concept and employment of slavery to the degree of going to war. How's that for a Judeo-Christian tradition? I mean, how much tradition you want to talk? How much Christian tradition do you really want to look at? I could go on for hours. I could go on for hours. They hold up this fictitious banner of honor with the Judeo-Christian ethic. Are you kidding me? Was it not Christian churches in Canada that sexually abused children, that buried them in the back in the number of hundreds to hide? Was it not Christian doctrine that justified the annihilation and the genocide of the American Native Americans here in the West? I can show you a lineage. Was it not Judeo-Christian tradition that said, hey, Abraham had slaves, so it's totally legitimate and appropriate for you to have slaves out of anybody with black skin or anyplace else? I can read you the verse right out of the Magic Bible that justified saying you can have slaves, you can buy them, you can sell them, as long as they're not Israelis. Deuteronomy 45 or something like that. You want to talk about that tradition? I've got to stop myself, because when you said that they're upholding the Judeo-Christian tradition, we can expect more of the same. We can expect more atrocities.
Exactly. Rodea also told Ramey she spoke with Ottawa County Board Chair Joe Moss, and that Moss had knowledge of the Coleman firm mulling over representing local school boards. Rodea texted to Ramey on December 12th, quote, Joe said Coleman is deciding today on school boards, end of quote. Rodea and Moss were both in attendance when the vote on Coleman took place in Allendale. Moss and Rodea co-founded the far-right political group Ottawa Impact in 2021 after they clashed with the Ottawa County Department of Public Health's pre-K through 6 mask mandate in all school districts, including the private Christian school Libertas. Moss's child attended Libertas at the time of the dispute when he and several other parents sued the county and health department, claiming religious exemption from mask and quarantine orders. The suit was ultimately dismissed. On January 3rd, when Moss and his fellow Ottawa Impact commissioners were sworn into office, they systematically added several items to the agenda with no public notice. Those decisions, among other things, included firing the county's administrator, selecting a different health officer appointee than the previous board put forth in December, and firing its longtime legal counsel to hire the Coleman firm. The Michigan Attorney General's office announced January 4th it would investigate the county board's first meeting and evaluate if the group violated the state's Open Meetings Act. Although the statement didn't outright accuse commissioners of violating OMA, the new elected officials clearly met or communicated prior to being sworn into office to plan the decisions made in that meeting, something the newly obtained text messages seem to prove. The Holland Sentinel has filed a Freedom of Information Act request for the communication between the new board members and the decisions they made at the January 3rd meeting. That request is pending. So there you go.
Right here in pure Michigan.
Yeah.
If there's anything we can laugh at to keep from crying, I'm trying to find something out there. Real quickly, how about the guy that was hosing down a homeless woman who's under arrest now in San Francisco?
They arrested the guy?
Yeah. Yeah, they have a arrest
Oh,
warrant.
my God. I'm shocked.
Yeah. That brings a smile to my face.
Yeah, I saw that on Inside Edition. And then he's trying to go on the apology tour. Oh, it was a terrible thing I did. Oh, yeah, I don't believe him. No.
Well, you see how he was just kind of standing there relaxed, got his legs crossed like he's watering petunias.
Yeah.
Some helpless old woman trying to stay warm, and he's hosing her down in December. Yeah. Well, he did. There is some justice trying to peek out here and there, but this Ottawa County thing, we're just in the beginning. This is just the first bubble of measles, and it's going to get worse.
Oh, I know. Well, Jack, let me ask you this. Are you ready to put on your lecture?
Well, why not? Yeah. Hey, let's jump in both feet.
All right. Here you go, folks. The doctors of talk radio are lecturing to you right now. Eyes up, get your pencils ready, take notes. You absolutely cannot call yourself a progressive if, 1, you're anti-Bernie Sanders, And 2, if you suck up to rich conservative traitors. Now, how did this get all started? Well, Jack, you and I have a mutual friend that started complimenting former Congressman Peter Meyer. Now, let's get to the background of this. Apparently, about a week or two ago, Peter Meyer and Andy Levin participated in some sort of a discussion at the University of Michigan in one of their halls, and it was broadcast over the internet. And apparently this mutual friend of ours liked what she heard and called Peter Meyer a national treasure and a true statesman, which I am just absolutely flabbergasted, because this is somebody that claims to be progressive.
Right.
So this person, who we're not going to name, will, if we need to, we will. Because I'm to the point, I don't care. If you say something stupid in public, I'm probably going to name you by name at this point, because you need to be called out on your stupidity. Well, one of her friends responded by saying, "No way, it's like Grand Rapids can finally breathe that Meyer is no longer our congressman." And our friend strongly disagreed with him, saying that Peter has integrity, Hillary doesn't. And I'm assuming she's talking about Congresswoman Hillary Scholten.
Yeah.
She continues, "There is a very valid reason Peter and Andy Levin are having an incredibly honest and frank conversation about democracy. Michigan lost 2 great legislators last year." Well, I can agree with her on half of it. When Andy Levin got primaried out because of the redistricting, but I don't see the other one. This is a guy born into wealth who has filed lawsuits against, I believe it was some sort of a play or something that was being put on by an LGBTQ group.
That goes on and on and on. Yeah, we only have an hour show.
Yeah. So apparently during this lecture or discussion or whatever it was called, the actual name of the talk was called "Restoring Confidence in Our Democracy," and it took place on January 12th. And our friend said, "Amusing how Andy is currently talking about how we weaponize bipartisanship during elections." So in response, the person that was responding to her said, "Then Andy is a turncoat for even trying to have a discussion with Peter. There is no way you can reason with Republicans. I definitely can't." Our friend's response, "Your loss on not watching this great discussion. You might learn a thing or two. You are the very reason the Ford School had this conversation. Your attitude is why our country is where it's at, and if you can't see that, then that's on you." So he responded, "Peter Meyer and the Republican Party are not the Eisenhowers or the Republicans of our parents' or grandparents' generations. They're racist, xenophobic, anti-LGBTQ, anti-immigrant, and that's been their agenda since Nixon. There is absolutely zero room to reason with them, discuss, or even discuss the state of our democracy when the majority of Republicans have contributed to the demise of it." Now that I can get behind. That is truth. That is God-honest truth. So, her response, "You lumping all Republicans in the same bag is exactly what they try to do to us. No, they've been doing it to us for 40 years. Wake up. Equating AOC as the same as Pelosi is what you are saying, knowing full well it's inaccurate. Calling Peter Meyer racist and anti-immigration is hilarious. Have you met his wife and their family? Funny thing, Gabby's mother is from the same town my grandmother is from in Brazil." Well, that doesn't mean anything.
Interesting.
It means nothing. So he responds, "You need to brush up on the Republican Party. That's who they are. That's who the Meyer family is. That's who Dutch reformists are. He may not say that to your face, but a guy like Peter will do anything for a vote."
Does this person not realize the decline in the integrity and the radical increase in the Republican Party since, you want to use Eisenhower as a watershed? I think that's good. I mean, do they acknowledge that at all? This is not the same bag. This is a total difference. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Santos, Pena, Walker, on and on and on. These are mad dogs. I don't know how you can argue that. We know that Peter tried the moderate approach, which was a losing cause, but there's nothing admirable in that. It's either that or he goes hard right in the primary. You've got to look at their history, and again, we don't have time to trace the red flags that show he's the same genre as the rest of the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. And if there's somebody who's not in that group right now, they've been turned on, they've been cut out, they've been primaried, or they've resigned. Was there some people we know, Kissinger, or not Kissinger, but the guy from Pennsylvania, we know of
Kinzinger.
Kinzinger, thank you. And then the
Liz Cheney.
So-called brave actions of Liz Cheney, but they're not in the party any longer.
No.
They're flat out of the party anymore. The door's been closed on them.
Yeah.
So this person, the first point in this lecture is to admit the decline, to call the condition what it is today as being worse, rotten smelling than it's ever been in Republican history, party history.
Exactly. And he once again reiterated that racism has been the Republican platform since Nixon. So our friend responded by saying, he didn't lie about having the endorsement of veterans and claimed to be an Obama alumni. Hillary did. She also lied about work with Mel Trotter to the point they had to file a cease and desist. She's a wolf in sheep's clothing and literally said anything to get elected. Support her if you want, but frankly, she couldn't give a rat's ass about you. Well, I can't disagree with the last sentence. It's like Carlin said, they don't give a about you.
But we're looking at a candidacy that in its demise opened the door for the worst president in the Western Hemisphere history. So I guess that in retrospect, because we both on this show were very candid about Hillary and her tendency for establishment and hawkism, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
But even that is not the same degree of foolishness that we see in the Republican Party today.
Absolutely.
Hillary is above that grade.
Absolutely. Our friend continues, when she ran her lies in a national call that a co-committee member was in with me, she lost all her credibility on the national stage. She did it to herself. So then he responds, so if veteran endorsements matter, then are you going to endorse Mayor Pete for U.S. Senate? And our friend responds, common defense might if we as a group sit down and vote on it as we do with all our candidates. He didn't get our endorsement in 2020 because we went with both Bernie and Warren, as we're a progressive veterans organization. So then he responds to our friend, there should be nothing to discuss. He's a vet, a Democrat, and that's all that should matter. Then he starts in with his Bernie bullshit. Take a listen to this, Jack.
This is where it gets real bad.
Bernie is anti-union, and he showed it when his staffers asked for recognition. The progressive movement is inherently anti-worker. I am really glad Bernie and his movement are a relic of the past. Let me respond with one word. Bull fucking shit.
Yeah. The card that this so-called progressive just played proves just how far off they are. When you hit the Bernie card, you're done.
Yep. Our friend responded, we endorsed Abdul in 2018 along with Rashida and AOC. We're progressives. We endorse progressives and Dems who share our values. I am just one of close to 40 people across the nation who sit on our committee. And Bernie's vet director came straight from our organization. The firewall and trying to do meetings was annoying as hell for a while. He responds to her by posting a Free Press story about Peter Meyer discriminating against the drag performers, which we've talked about on this show. Also brings up an article from Deadline Detroit about Peter Meyer not meeting with Kellogg's striking workers. But you know who did? You know who did? And we played audio of it right here on this show. Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
Period. End of story. So our friend responded and said, yeah, and look at how he responded and advocated after the fact. You also realize Meyer's one of the top LGBTQ employers in the state, and they're unionized. The Meyer family owns the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, Local 951. Quote me on it. Unbelievable.
It is. That's circular logic, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah, let me continue. Our friend says, look, I get it. There's nothing I can say that will get your head out of your ass and realize Peter has never been a traditional Republican and that he's much more progressive than you'd think. I haven't seen a progressive bone in his body yet.
You can see so-called progressiveness in Peter Maher, but you can't see it in Bernie Sanders. That's really myopic.
Talk to the men and women who served with him, and you would learn quickly Peter is nothing what you'd assume. Maybe that's why Lupe was supporting him in the primary as well. But I sure as don't see you giving former Democrat State Board of Education member trouble over her choice.
I don't get too excited about Lupe's endorsements.
And then neither do I. So he responds to our friend, the Myers are some of the biggest union busters in the state next to the DeVos family. Why don't you think SEIU or MNA have tried to organize Spectrum? The Myers, DeVosses, and Van Andels would throw so much money into the union busting efforts it wouldn't be funny. Just because a company is unionized doesn't mean they are pro-union either.
Yeah.
Just like how, once again, and he goes again, just like how Bernie Sanders talks a big game of supporting unions, it doesn't actually mean he's pro-union himself. Also, Meyer isn't Peter's company. That's like a child saying, that's my house. No, stupid, that's your parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. The amount of absolute brain cell killing stupidity is on display on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Mind-numbingly, brain cell killing stupidity.
But, you could almost listen in interest and try to give this pseudo-progressive some credibility until the tables are turned on Bernie. That's the litmus. I know It is for me. I know it is for you as well.
Absolutely.
There will never be a pure progressive presenter of the truth in our lifetime, maybe not in the lifetime of this country, than Bernie Sanders. And that's not even hyperbole.
Absolutely. And I don't even know how to respond to this ridiculousness anymore, Jack. I just throw my head up and walk away and just say you're both stupid. My God.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unimaginable.
Yeah, there's a lot of dry rot in the ranks. You look at the call themselves progressive. There's a lot of dry rot. We've gone through this in years past, but this is an argument that's drawn out to fine points, so it's really easy to study. You're doing a good job.
Yeah. So there's your lecture for today, folks. I don't even know what to even think anymore. It's ridiculous. It really is.
Well, we still have a bedrock of progressivism in the Senate. His name is Bernie Sanders. He hasn't gone anywhere.
Yep.
He helps to sort through these kinds of debates. You study his legacy, you study his points. They haven't wavered. He is the defender of the working man, of the middle class, beyond doubt. And he is such an abnormality compared to the rest of the environment.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Matt how many Bernie Sanders rallies he's been to, how many times he's actually listened to what the man has said, and then gone and done the research into what he did to back it up.
Not just the content of what he's saying. When you're in person with him, we're human beings, and we can sense, I hope we can sense, other human beings' character. And when you see the man, instead of reading a transcript, you can sense the quality of human being that he is. It's just incredible. I remember I think it was Lansing, when a little bird flew up and landed on the podium.
Yeah, I forget where that happened.
And there was no content of philosophy with that bird, but there was a purity in the moment, and Bernie fit right in it.
Yes, he did.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yes, he did. Jack, I know you wanted to talk about what's happening in Florida now with Governor Death Sentence and his efforts to, quite frankly, dismantle higher education.
Yeah, it really is. We talked earlier about the conservative war against education. We could easily use a synonym, war against intelligence. But DeSantis has been at it again. We know what he did back in 2021 when they passed actual legislation banning any form of CRT being taught in any public schools.
By CRT, you mean critical race theory.
Exactly. And that encompassed briefly, the exposure of systemic racism in our political systems, in our legal systems and institutions. It's sophisticated, and it was, for the most part, it's always been taught in colleges, and it was going to be taught in colleges again in Florida. There really was no threat to secondary education, but he passed that law anyway, and he also passed a law that banned any material being transmitted to students in the public schools in Florida related to or directly from the 1619 Project. The 1619 Project, in the most basic form, is a correction of the historical arrival of slaves here in the shores of the United States. I don't want to say North America because people only think United States is North America. But the point is that the slave arrival was almost 100 years earlier than we were taught. I've been to Jamestown. They give you the impression, the tour guide, that it was just hard work and sacrifice that kept this little town going, when in fact, it was a ship that sailed in and gave them hard work free in the form of slaves in 1619. That is history that will never darken or fill the pages of a book in Florida schools, okay? Now, the contemporary thing, real quickly, I think within 48 hours ago, is that he has his administration now rejecting the inclusion of African-American studies for AP classes. Those are the most advanced studies in high schools. Usually those are college-bound students. And they now cannot, it's illegal, to teach African-American studies in AP classes in any Florida high school. That's appalling. But what's really appalling to me is that I have relatives in Florida. I know something. I lived in Florida. And I heard years ago about a little town called Rosewood, which is up close to Gainesville, 9 miles from the Gulf of Mexico. Rosewood was a prospering town of blacks. They worked, they were employed, all the businesses run by blacks, and they were thriving. But in 1923, exactly 100 years ago, from this very month, they were wiped out. The city was completely burnt, razed, and the people were killed, over 30 of them. They escaped for their life, never to come back. And for 70 years, there was not a mention of it. There was no historical record of it. And it's in that atmosphere that DeSantis wants to further bury over American slave history and African-American history here in the United States. That was a proven omission of history, a slaughter, a genocide of this city called Rosewood. When it came to light, it was so shocking, they made a movie in 1997 called Rosewood, centered and based on that occurrence. In 1994, 2 years before that movie came out, the then Governor Lawton Childs signed a bill to compensate survivors and their descendants up to $100,000 per person of the city of Rosewood. Can you imagine? Do you see the degree of difference between DeSantis and Lawton Childs? As a matter of fact, that Florida bill, which is titled 591, House Bill 591, is today considered the best model for reparation for Black Americans in American political history. Unchallenged. Emanating out of Florida, the most racist backdrop right now, and war against accurate history for the blacks in that state. In that state, it's incredible. You have the best model for reparations for Black Americans that was signed in 1994 that came about. Listeners, why? Why did that reparation take place? It's because of the historical recognition of what took place. You didn't have the recognition. You had no reparations. You didn't have any history of this genocide. There would be no sense of the need for history to be inspected, Black history in Florida. But we have a racist, hardcore racist doing war with the truth to hide the fact, just like in Tulsa, that these people were summarily killed because of the greed and racism of the white people in the state of Florida. no time to hide history. It should be at this time articulated and magnified, but the opposite is happening.
Yes, indeed. And this is coming on the heels of, we just got done celebrating Martin Luther King Day. And actually on Martin Luther King Day, the History Channel repeated their documentary about what happened in Tulsa with the burning down of Black Wall Street, with the murders, with the mass graves.
Yep. And it wasn't present in our historical memory. It wasn't there.
No.
They had airplanes with guns, machine guns, flying over. It was like a battle. It was like a World War II battle. Machine gunning the city of Tulsa, or the Wall Street, the black community there.
Yes. And that was covered up for many years. The only publication that covered it was the locally owned black newspaper in Tulsa.
Yeah.
Tulsa World wouldn't touch it.
Right. Thank God for voices like the one Southpaws, the uncovering of the American, Native American schools, which were nice words for prisons, we talked about before that was uncovered. And the need for the simple truth to break out like sunrise has never been more needed, and it's being stopped. The battle of the conservatives against the truth is the most threatening thing I've seen. At 74, I'm not in the classroom any longer, but it's like a raw wound to me to see this. We talked about the Native Americans being taken from their parents, and then 4 or 5 years later, they're unearthing graves where I think there's up to 8,000 Native Americans in Canada have been unearthed. They've had the same thing happen here in the United States, but they're trying to cover it over. The powers to be are trying to hide the fact that they're discovering the same graves here.
They absolutely are. But we're going to stay on top of stories like this because the truth needs to see the light of day. It really does.
You've got it.
And we're starting to run out of time. I want to quickly mention something that I had talked about earlier in the show, just in passing. On next week's show, we will be able to officially announce the top 10 finalists for Douchebag of the Year 2022. As I mentioned on last week's show, I have assembled a blue ribbon panel of judges. Jack, you are one of them. These judges have the entire list of all 77 Hammer Time winners from 2022. They're going to whittle it down to 10. We're going to put it up for a vote starting on January 27th on our official Facebook page. So go to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show and vote for your top 3 in order. We will have ranked choice voting. So whoever gets the most number ones, they're number one. And we'll announce that on our show coming up in February. But,
absolutely.
Yeah, but right now, we got to get out of here. We'll be back next week. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Jack Prince.
Please support independent media, the First Amendment, and a woman's right to choose.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.